really excited to tell you about is the Mines Teacher Education Alliance Mines UNC partnership. I said Mines twice, but that's because it's here.
So this is an incredible partnership between Mines and UNC that allows Mines students to graduate as certified high school teachers. So they're able to go and take all of the courses that they need to take to be able to end up as a high school teacher at the end of it, which is just incredible because not only is there a shortage of STEM teachers in high schools, but we know that our Mines students are some of the top students in these fields, and so to be able to have them go out and be in contact with these high school students, impacting their education, it'll only influence the students that we're getting for the better in the future. Just an overall really beneficial program to have.
So far we've had 43 students take classes with the program. I've taken 3 classes myself with it. It's awesome. They bring some UNC professors to campus or some high school professors to campus, or you take one online, and they're just really interesting classes that teach you all about education, about educational psychology or different conceptions of schooling or different pedagogical methods, everything. It's really interesting. And so the really big mission is that they want to get some Mines students who aren't being fully tapped into. So many kids come here because they were good at math and science in high school, and so they were told to become engineers. But then a year or two in, a lot of, like 25% actually realize that they don't want to be engineers, and so they leave. And so this is kind of trying to pick up that extra slack that Mines has and says, like, you're still really talented and we could use you in such a productive way in this world. And so the mantra is that those who can do and those who can inspire teach.
So we have a few fun facts for you. We're going to play a little game show game, but we'll just tell you the facts. So about 78% of teachers, secondary school teachers, continue into year 5. So this is a much higher statistics than many people assume. Had we asked you, you likely would have guessed in the 20 or 30%. I know I did. 5 out of 6 science teachers said that they would choose the same career again, but only 27.8% of Teach for America teachers actually continue into the profession after 5 years. So the Team Up program is an incredible gateway for these teachers in a better way to get them enjoying the profession than maybe Teach for America, though that's also a great program.
So there are a lot of misconceptions about high school and secondary education. So one of them is how satisfied you're going to be in the job. So this is comparing those physics bachelor's students who went into the industry versus those who went into high school teaching positions. And in intellectual challenge and overall satisfaction, it's actually higher for those going into high school teaching, which is just, you would never predict it, I don't think. Also, it's just high school physics, math, and chemistry teachers are just in such high demand right now. The considerable shortage is rated on this scale, and the top 5 are physics, math, and chemistry are in there. And so if Mines is able to help with this shortage by providing just amazingly talented teachers, it's just, I can't even imagine what the world would be like. It's really exciting. So this is a really great transition because the professor who is largely a part of bringing this program here is Dr. Christine Callan. I don't know how many of you know her, but if you don't, make an effort to meet her because she's just life-changing and wonderful. And so we're really excited to talk about her and how she's changed teaching here at Mines.
Yeah, so she has spearheaded this Team Up effort along with other professors here at Mines. She also has been in charge of the FIS 1 curriculum for a few years now. It's our collective senior year. Her first year was our first year here, so that's also a fun fact.
Aww.
And she was just promoted to teaching professor as Drs. Carney, Nicholas, and Swanson, thank you, were.
Yeah.
So that's really exciting news for everyone. And then she also just won the Mines Teaching Award. So again, we really recommend that you get to know her.
She's just changing the world, totally. So we asked her a little bit about her path to Mines and to physics and education in general. Before her college experience, she'd never taken a physics class. And so when she got to college, she took some physics classes and just totally fell in love, but also really loved math as well. So she double majored in math and physics got her undergraduate, and then went into grad school, but then left to go teach high school physics at an all-girls school in Boston, and just had a great experience with education there. And I think it's framed a lot of how well she's formed this program here, is that experience. She also, the reason why she went back to grad school after that was because she read this book called Mindset. Have any of you read it?
Cool. I actually was recommended this book by Dr. Cullen my freshman year. It sets out this revolutionary way of thinking about learning. So you have your fixed mindset where you believe that you're kind of born with what you got and you can't really do anything about it. Some people are born geniuses and some people just aren't. And then on the other hand, you have this growth mindset that believes that if you are willing to put the time and the effort into becoming really good at something, then you can succeed. And so being able to shift into a growth mindset, especially when it comes to learning, can really unlock a lot of success for students. So it's something that has been revolutionary in my life, a lot of other people's lives, and it's a great thing to share with your students or just like realize yourself.
So as many of you know, we always ask the person we're interviewing for some advice, and this really ties into the advice that Dr. Callan gave us, which was don't sell yourself short. So if there's something that you love and you want to do it and you're passionate about it, find the way to do it. Give yourself opportunities. Find a coach who's going to help you. Find a mentor who's going to help you do it, because you can do it. Don't just subscribe to I'm not smart enough. Don't sell yourself short. You totally can do it. You just have to be willing to adapt and find the right pathways. And so that was some really great advice for us. We were really thankful to interview her. That was our last interview and colloquium of the semester, so we wanted to thank all of you guys so much for this incredible opportunity. You've all been good at playing along with all of our creative ideas, and we're so grateful. We've had such a great time getting to know all of the professors that we've had an honor to interview, and yeah, thank you.
And we're sorry that we didn't get to interview everyone, but like Izzy said, thank you so much. This has been a really, really cool opportunity for us. And with that, that's all, folks.
Thank you, Jessica, Izzy, you're all the best. It's been a pleasure working with you with Colloquium. All right, so it is now my pleasure to introduce, if I did any of those things right, apparently not. This. All right, it's my pleasure to introduce Professor Jessica Ellis from Colorado State University, and I'm going to ask Professor Ellis some questions. We also have a gift for you from our department. Yeah, you're welcome.
This is so fun.
Yeah.
Do I open it right now, or can I? What am I
Either one. You know, we've had both experiences here at Colloquium.
I'm gonna wait.
Okay. It's fine with us.
We can do it at dinner.
All right. Jess, thank you for visiting us at Colorado School of Mines at our last AMS Colloquium of the semester. You're an assistant professor in mathematics education at CSU in Fort Collins in the math department, and you've been there since about fall 2014. Right? You did your PhD in a joint program of math and science education at UCSD and San Diego State University.
Yep.
So according to your CV, you've written 26 published articles, given 69 presentations on your work. Which one is your favorite and why?
It sounds really exhausting. Right? So I should say a lot of those publications are conference proceedings, so it's not quite as many as it sounds like. So my favorite is an article that was in ZDM, which is, I don't know what that stands for anymore because it's German.
Okay.
But it's the International Journal of Math Education, and I'll show the title of it in a second. But basically what we did was we looked at, in Calc 1 classes, some survey responses from students and instructors talking about what was going on in class and different frequencies of lectures, frequencies of whole class discussion, of group work. And so we were wondering how similar those were. Do students say that the same stuff's happening in class as the instructors? And so we found that on average, yes, instructors were saying similar things to what the average response was from their class. But what was really interesting was to look at where the variance was. So when, let's say on average, students are saying it's the same amount of whole class discussion as the instructor, but in that spread, who's saying there is less versus more was related to their persistence through the calculus sequence. So students who were less likely to actually persist onto Calculus 2 were also less likely to say that whole class discussion was happening within the same class that somebody else was saying it was happening a bunch, or that the instructor thought it was happening. So I thought this was nice because as a teacher, like it resonates, because I know when I'm trying to like foster a whole class discussion, I am trying to get other people to talk, so I'm not the only one talking, but I'm also trying to like advance some specific mathematical agenda. Like I have somewhere I want to go, and I have a time crunch, so I often will choose the students who are like articulate and maybe will say things quickly and correctly. And for me, reading, like finding the results that we did in this paper, it was a little bit helpful to think that maybe I need to prioritize not just trying to advance this mathematical agenda, but hear more voices.
Great.
Teaching.
Thank you very much. If you can tell, you must have been interviewed before. Is this, because some people, when I interview them, they talk to me, but you're talking to them, which is what we're supposed to do. And speaking of that, your work has received a substantial amount of media coverage, including articles in Huffington Post and Washington Post. So do you feel that the mainstream media has done a good job representing your work?
Yeah, so I'll say, so I'm just laughing at these two of their faces. So this all happened this past summer. I was in Spain when the media stuff started happening. So we had tried to get the article out before we went to Spain, but it ended up getting picked up or launched in PLOS One right as I was getting into Spain for a really fun vacation. And so I didn't want to ignore these cool media requests, but I also didn't want to stop drinking sangria in the middle of the afternoon. And so it was really nice because I had this opportunity to kind of reflect on my work and be a little bit more honest. Not honest, but like more off the cuff than you need to hedge in an article. So in the writing of the discussion in an article, you say like these results may imply that for some populations, blah, 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 and this was an opportunity just to be a little bit more opinionated. And so I think they did. I really liked the interviews. I liked the opportunity to just blabber about my work in a less professional, or less like academic and rigid setting.
With sangria.
Yeah. Yes.
Great. So tell us a little bit about your plans and ideas for sort of your next project.
So because of that paper that came out last summer that I'll talk a little bit more about today, I've gotten more interested in kind of what we're doing in our classes to serve a variety of student populations. So women and men, first generation, not first generation, various racial and ethnic minorities, various genders, various sexual orientations of students, just really trying to be aware of that we have many different types of students in our classes that we're serving. And so I'm curious to look into how, especially when we run active learning classes, students from some sort of potentially marginalized population might actually experience those active learning classes. So if I'm running a whole class discussion, who are those students that are frequently speaking, or who are more excited to speak, or more confident to speak, or are less worried about confirming some stereotype threat, or some stereotype. So looking at the experiences of students from marginalized populations in active learning, I think specifically in calculus.
Yeah, cool. Well, we're excited to hear more about it too. And then
stay
finally,
tuned in like 5-10 years.
Okay. So what sorts of things do you do besides math and math education research?
So when I was in California.
This is the coastline in San Luis Obispo County.
Yeah, so I spent...
Which is where you're
I spent a lot of time here. So I spent a fair bit of time surfing, like, right there, and hiking right there, which is really fun. This is right there. So I've had to adjust my activities a lot since I'm not surfing all the time. And so I recently completed a purchase that's like rounding out my activity, my toy box. So I now have a road bike and a mountain bike and an alpaca pack raft that I play with on the rivers, and skis and skate skis.
Cool.
So I'm trying to take a lot of different things to replace one like $500 surfboard.
Yeah.
So it's taken a while.
Awesome. Well, we're excited to hear your talk. Let me get your computer set up.
Cool.
This.
And that's a fun picture you chose.
Oh yeah, good. Well, you know what? I'm going to let you do that because it's not even open. This. technical difficulties. Maybe one of those like signs that I put the wires together.
Can I
You want to put it up here?
Yeah.
Of course.
It's kind of like an obstacle course. Like, how fast
Yeah.
can you do this?
That.
Woo. Okay.
Jess Ellis.
Thank you, Mom.
Yep.
Okay, so today I'm going to be talking to you about the features of college calculus programs. So I'm going to talk about an overview of the MA's 2 different college calc projects. This work draws on the work of many people. So it's been all of this work's been funded by the NSF, supported by the MAA, and then involved people from all of these institutions. So I won't go through all of their names, but just to note, like, this is not my work alone. It's bringing in a lot of different people from a lot of places. Okay, so the first project is called CSPCC. This is Characteristics of Successful Programs in College Calculus. This project, we took a focus on Calculus 1 at community colleges, bachelor's granting, master's granting, and PhD granting institutions. PTC, this is Progress Through Calculus, and this is the second project I'm going to be talking about. This project takes a focus on pre-calc, Calc 1, and Calc 2, and then we focused only at master's and PhD institutions. So we kind of expanded the content scope and then narrowed down the institution scope. Just to get a sense of the timeline of this work, so CSPCC survey started in 2010, and I'll say more about what went into each of these projects. But we did some surveys in 2010, case studies in 2012. We sent out a census survey for PTC in 2015, and we're doing case studies for this work 2017 to 2019. So it's about a decade's worth of work, basically, that we're covering. So obviously, if we're spending a decade's worth of work with NSF money and MAA support, there are a lot of resources going into this work, and so we might wonder, why are we focusing so much on calculus? And this picture that I'm borrowing from the NCES is a big motivation I think that you may have heard about. So this metaphor of the STEM pipeline. We have students coming in from high school, and then some of those students make it through high school, some of those students make it to college, some of those students end up majoring in STEM, and then a very few number of those students actually graduate in STEM. So the President's Council of Advisors on Science and Technology, RIP PCAST, so this advisory board is no longer with us. When they were operating, they projected that we needed about 1 million more STEM graduates over the next decade. This came out in 2012, in order to meet the demands of industry and teaching professions. But, as this picture shows us, the STEM pipeline is leaking. So this piece of it is really where those of us in this room might be a little bit more focused. So as we look at students who are coming into college interested in majoring in STEM, here at Mines, if you come into Mines, obviously you're interested in majoring in STEM, so that's all of you here. This trickle of students who are actually graduating, this data is from 2011, but Izzy gave us the number for Mines, about 25% of matriculation. So if we think about that, it's kind of this combined matriculation of students leaving college and students leaving STEM. So here it's kind of compounded, the same thing. The numbers that we found nationally, nationally about 40 to 60% of students who enter college intending to study STEM actually continue on to do so and graduate with a STEM degree. So a lot of research has continuously pointed to introductory STEM courses, like Calc 1, as a contributing factor for this lack of students persisting through college in these STEM degrees. So the first project, like I said, really took a focus on Calc 1, and first goal of this project was to just try to understand a little bit more about the students who were even enrolling in mainstream calculus. So surprisingly, we didn't have a ton of information on just who these students were, so that was one of our goals. We also wanted to look at the impact of various innovative projects that have happened at calculus in different calculus programs across the country to try to see what was beneficial about those different projects. So calculus has been a topic of study in the research world for many years. It's not like we're new in studying this. So we really wanted to see, of all the different innovations that have happened over the last multiple decades, what's sticking and what's working. Then we wanted to conduct explanatory case studies of more exemplary programs to try to understand how these programs were succeeding, and then develop a model that articulates the factors under which the students are more likely to be successful in calculus. Use these results to leverage improvements across the country. Oh yeah, and then that was it. So I started as a graduate student at this stage, and so it's been really cool because now at Colorado State, we last year got funding for a calculus center, and a lot of the argument for why we needed this calculus center was coming from this project. So that was really cool to be able to see, hopefully it's an improvement, I think it will be, but so we're using this to actually leverage improvements across the country, even at my home institution. So the first phase of this project was 6 web-based surveys that we sent to students at the beginning and the end of the Calculus 1 term in fall, and then again 1 year later. We also sent surveys to instructors at the beginning and the end of that term, and to course coordinators to try to understand some more programmatic things. And so when we're talking about success here and successful programs, these are the pieces that we're looking at. So what we needed were institutions where we had a reasonable response rate, so we actually had people buying into our survey and giving us information. We wanted to see positive or at least neutral changes in enjoyment, confidence, and interest in mathematics, so those were the main pieces. Persistence onto Calculus 2 among the students who were STEM intending, and then any other information we were able to obtain, like if a school had been previously recognized for the calculus program, we kept that, or we took that in mind. What you'll notice that we don't have here is anything about content. So we were not looking at institutions that the students were the smartest in calculus or were learning the most in calculus. We were looking for institutions where students who wanted to go on and get a STEM degree weren't blocked from doing so because of their experience in Calc 1. So then in phase 2, based off of this, we identified 16-ish institutions to go visit and conducted case studies to try to understand why they were being more successful than the others. I also want to share really quick. So if you're interested in getting any of this survey data, we have it all available. So none of the case study data is available, but all of the survey data is. So that's available online at maa.org. You can submit a request with any proposed study. So if you just want to play around with the data, you want to use it for a class, could be a really cool thing to use for a statistics class to I've heard of people using it to try to redo some of our analyses, which I think is pretty cool. So just send it, there's descriptions on there. We're just trying to make sure that you're not asking to do an analysis that we're still in the midst of doing. And we promise that if you come up with a really good idea, we won't pretend like we were in the midst of doing that study. Promise. So there's a code book available in the MAA notes volumes. I'll show a picture of that. So it's the survey data only, beginning and end of term for students, instructors, and coordinators. So we have complete data here for 3,000 students enrolled in 300 and enrolled with 300 instructors at 125 colleges or universities. So it's a fun data set to play with. We also, so on web, I'm going to be sharing little tidbits from a couple different articles here, but that's all really easily available if you have any interest. So there's a way to get to our, you can just Google MAA CSPCC, and this study here, so this ZDM, the International Journal of Math Education, is the one I was talking about that was my favorite. So the formal title is Student Perceptions of Pedagogy and Associated Persistence in Calc. So there's some places you can go if I skim over stuff really quickly, which I'm going to. We also have an MAA notes volume called Insights and Recommendations, and so this was really written not to math ed researchers, it was written to practitioners, so people who are actually teaching these classes, department chairs thinking about making changes. It's available free to download. There's 11 chapters giving overview of results, so all of the stuff that I'm going to talk about very quickly is here in a chapter more in depth. So that's a table of contents just so you can see. And then the code book for data for researchers is in this. So if you have any questions about that, I'm happy to say more. Okay, so an overview of the survey findings. which, like I said, I'm going to just go through them pretty quickly, so if you want more details, there's lots of places to get it. One thing that we found out, calculus is a very effective destroyer of student confidence. This may or may not be surprising. So we have students who are in high school. They are one of few students, let's say, especially at Mines, one of few students from their high school that even got into a school like Mines. And so you're probably thinking like, oh, I'm pretty great. And then you get to college and everybody around you is similarly great. And so that might be a reason. So it's not so much a destroying of the confidence, but just like bringing an inflated confidence down. That's a way to look at it. A different way to look at it is that this is really negative, and we're taking students that are really excited about mathematics. They're coming to college because they want to be a chemistry major and engineer, and then they take their first Calc 1 course, and it really wrecks how they feel about their ability to go on and succeed. So you can spin that however you want. We also found that the destruction of confidence seems to have a much larger effect on women than men, making women 1.5 times as likely as men to switch out of a major that requires more than one semester of calc. So that's huge, and I think a really not necessarily surprising result, but I was happy that we were able to put some data to something that many of us maybe were aware of intuitively. Unfortunately, there were not enough racial or ethnic minorities in our Calc 1 courses from the survey data to do a similar analysis with them. So, yeah.
Do you take into account some students that take pre-calculus for Calculus 1, or is this Calculus 1 without ever taking pre-calculus?
These are any students that are in Calc 1, mainstream Calc 1 fall. So they, do I say it here? Most Calc 1 students are repeating a course they took in high school. So yes, some of them have taken pre-calc, most of them, 2/3, this was in 2012 when we got this data, had taken something called calculus in high school.
And is there a difference?
In what?
They took pre-calc or not?
Yeah. So in this bullet here, and I'll say, do I say more about this? I don't know, so I'll say it now. So in this study, we're controlling for their intended major, their previous calc experience, so what classes they took, their reports of instruction, their SAT and ACT scores, and let's say that's it for the moment.
Okay,
And so we're still getting this result. Great question. And I should say, I'm happy to take questions throughout, so I'm just going to kind of go, but please feel free to ask questions while I'm chatting. Okay, so I want to focus on these two bullets right here for a moment and say a little bit more about these. So when we asked students, we gave them a bunch of different choices for why they were leaving on the survey. So we said if you do not intend to take Calc 2, check all the reasons that apply. One of the reasons was I never intended to take Calc 2, and so we're not including these students here because we're looking at only the students who were originally planning to take Calc 2 and then are either switching or persisting. So reasons were given by 329 switchers. So switchers are the students intended to take Calc 2, no longer intend to take Calc 2. And so here are the different reasons that we gave them. I changed my major and now do not need to take Calc 2. So by calling them switchers, we're kind of assuming that this is what's going on. To do well in Calc 2, I would need to spend more time and effort. My experience in Calc 1 made me decide not to take Calc 2. I have too many other courses I need to complete. I don't believe I understand the ideas of Calc 1 well enough. And then we have this aggregated here, or disaggregated, by either STEM intending or STEM interested, and that was based on their major. So STEM intending are the typical STEM majors that we would expect. The STEM interested are, let's say they're like a business major who is focusing on econ rather than focusing on marketing. And so they have like a STEM flavor, or they're STEM curious. And then we have it split by men and women. So I'll give you just a quick second to think about which, if you expect to see any differences. And so here's the numbers. A lot of them confirm what we would expect. So for instance, I changed my major and now do not need to take Calc 2. It makes sense that a higher percentage of our actual STEM intending students say this compared to the STEM curious or STEM interested. The only place that was statistically significantly different was this last question. So I do not believe I understand the ideas of Calc 1 well enough to take Calc 2. So this was a statistically significant difference between men and women, both among the STEM intending and the STEM interested students. And so this points to either they're reporting a difference in ability, or they're reporting a difference in their perception of their ability. So then we looked into that. We have many reasons to believe this is confidence and not ability playing a role. So in our study, we didn't get a ton of actual grade data for students, so we don't report this as a real finding here, but I can share it just more informally in a presentation. 42% of male switchers and 48% of female switchers got an A or B in Calc 1, so we didn't see a big grade difference. Research conclusively states that there's no math ability difference between genders. One meta-analysis says there's no difference. One analysis here found that women are actually outperforming men. I'm not using this as evidence that women are stronger ability-wise, just to say there's kind of evidence all over the board. The meta-analysis says there's no difference. So we're just going to take as an assumption that there's not a difference in ability. I think we should be all okay with that. But there is a difference in mathematical confidence between genders, and this is kind of well documented by other researchers, including Carol Dweck, who was one of the researchers who did the mindset study. I really like this paper, The Good, Raton, and Dweck, that uses these mindsets but focuses on a lot of different math studies. So we wanted to look into the role of confidence. So on the beginning, which was around week 3, and end of term surveys, which was around week 12, we asked students to rate on a scale of 1 to 6, I'm confident in my mathematical ability. So here we have, it says pre-post, but this is like beginning and end of term. And so this is the scale. 6 was strongly agree, 1 was strongly disagree. So this is more confident, more self-reported confidence. Okay, so the red bars are males, and the black bars are females. The solid bars are persisters, and the speckled bars are switchers. So one thing we see here, based on the error bars, we can see a statistical difference slightly, that women are coming in with slightly lower confidence than men. The error bars for the switchers are all over the place. And so what I take from that is that there's a larger spread in the incoming confidence among students who end up switching, both for men and women. So I said everything's going to go down. Do you guys have any predictions of differences?
The bottom of your...
Everybody's going to end up down here. Yeah, it's true. Here we go. And what I find really interesting about this is that kind of the rate of decline is really similar between genders among persisters and switchers. So we see that the switchers are plummeting their confidence more than the persisters, and they're ending up way below the persisters, and especially if we compare like where the female persisters or switchers are ending up compared to the male switchers. So it's not so much that they're decreasing more over the course of that semester, it's more that they're incoming with lower confidence. And so there are a couple ways that we can look at this as, let's say, Calc 1 instructors. One thing we can say is there's nothing I can do because this is just how my students are coming in from high school. It's really the high school teacher's issue, they need to fix this. Another way that we can react to this is think about ways that we can actually increase their confidence over the course of the term in our classes, and try to think about instructional practices that can support those students to gain confidence and kind of repair this difference in confidence that they're coming in with.
But everybody goes down.
But everybody goes down. Yeah, so I don't think I just want to increase my women students' confidence. I would love to increase everybody's confidence. I don't think there's any harm in that.
Are there any studies about the confidence in different cultures, different countries?
Yeah, I don't have them off the top of my head, but I think it would be fascinating because anecdotally, when I've talked to friends about this, I have a friend from Russia. She grew up in Russia and said like this wasn't even a thing. Like it was just expected that women were, like, more so than men, were going to go into mathematics. And so it's absolutely a cultural thing. There's not some genetic issue going on here.
But I just
Yeah.
to know the statistics.
Yeah. So knowing that we can compare this to other cultures, like, really confirms that this is a weird cultural thing. And so trying to think about how to shift that is quite a big undertaking, because we're trying to shift a culture through what happens in our classroom.
It starts way before they go to college.
Yeah, so that's how we can just say, well, let the fourth grade teachers deal with it. But I also want to try to deal with it as a college instructor.
Is the term mathematical ability that might be different because calculus is a slightly different beast compared to algebra, for example. And students are very good in school, they have done pre-calculus, please point out. Some of them are very good in algebra.
Mm-hmm.
And
Some of
so
them.
I come from, I mean, in Australia, it's hard in the sense of when you take 6 credits. 3 credits calculus, 3 credits algebra. That's on a very high level. So you don't have an option of just take calculus, absolutely. So probably, calculus is a slightly different type of thinking actually. It's, in many sense, it's a lot easier than algebra.
Yeah, so I wonder if some of that decline, that's an interesting way to think about this decline for everybody, that it's a difference in not just how they're positioning themselves with mathematics in general, but what they think about mathematical ability has shifted over the course of that term. So they have some confidence in their algebraic mathematical ability, but less in their calculus mathematical ability. That's not something that we've disentangled here at all, and I don't think we can, but it's a good thought. Although, I don't think that we should expect differences there between genders. Okay, so I'm going to switch gears a little, give an overview of our case studies, and then I'm going to share a little bit about the second project that we're in the midst of that we did here, and then that'll be it. So we selected 5 PhD granting institutions that were more successful than their comparable institutions, and this was on kind of those non-cognitive measures of success. 3 large and 2 small technical institutions, so we purposefully tried to select some institutions that gave a spread of institution types. And these were not the most prestigious universities or students, but they were slightly stronger students based on their SATs. So for instance, like the students in our sample had an average SAT of 670 versus 659 on average for the rest of their math SAT. So I think, we didn't go to San Diego State, for instance, like it wasn't that type of an institution, but we also weren't going to Stanford. So we were going somewhere in the middle. So what we did after we did all these site visits was try to identify any common features across these different settings that might indicate what might be supportive of a good calculus program on a large scale for more of a variety of institutions. So this is where we came up with the 7 common features. So I'm going to go through these kind of quickly and then talk more about them later. So the first 3 are very student-based. So one thing, I'll start here, one thing that we were happy to see, since we weren't selecting these institutions as places where students did better on some math test, we were excited to see that the institutions were actually doing rigorous mathematics too. So the students were having better non-cognitive success, and then they also were doing that in more rigorous courses. So the standards were high, but the standards were high where students had a lot of different learning resources to support them to achieve in these more rigorous courses, and the students were placed in the highest course for which they thought the place thought they would be successful. So if a student had already taken Calc BC, they were really advising them not to take Calc 1, but trying to get them in Calc 2 or even Calc 3 and give them the supports to be successful there. The 3 other aspects were much more related to teaching. So we did see across the board an attention to teaching and especially active learning. Not all of the institutions only one of them really required active learning in their calc courses, but a lot of them supported it and kind of nudged instructors to do more active learning. There was also a lot of, let's do this one next. A lot of graduate students, we were going to PhD institutions here, so a lot of GTAs were involved in the teaching, and when they were involved in the teaching, there was also a lot of support to help them be good teachers. So this seems like not that surprising, but if they were involved in teaching, they were somehow prepared for that teaching. And then there was also a lot of coordination. So since mostly at the institutions we went to, research faculty were not often teaching these courses. They were more like teaching professors, graduate students, postdocs. There was a lot of coordination of those courses. And when research faculty were teaching them, there were some of the common coordinated elements that they participated in, but they were given the option to opt out of that coordination. And across the board, we only saw one example of a research professor opting out, and it's because they were a math ed research professor that wanted to just like go way above and beyond what the person was doing. So we thought that those were really interesting working together. And then the last one kind of lives on its own, and it's local data. So at the institutions we visited, a few of them we would say, okay, the MAA's decided that you're one of the more successful institutions because of your Calc 1 program, and they would say, like, there's no way that's true. We have this issue, and this is going on, and we have, like, these types of students aren't being successful going in, or they're having issues going on to Calc 2. And so it was that, like, knowledge of their issues that I think was a common, interesting theme. So they were consistently collecting local data and using that local data to inform changes to the program. So collecting data about how students were doing with placement and using that to tweak the placement scales or things like that. So if you hear people refer to like the 7 common features of successful Calc programs, this is what they are. And they're really rooted in what's happening at PhD granting institutions, not community colleges, because this is where we got the most interesting data. So that was kind of the big result of the first study. So to transition to PTC, CSPCC gave us a wide understanding of what's happening in mainstream Calc 1. We wanted to know more about what happens before and after Calc 1, other flavors of calculus, so not just the single mainstream Calc 1, and the implementation of those 7 features at more institutions to kind of test our theory that these were important things. So, and we also wanted to look at students from traditionally underrepresented populations. So we had such low participation from those students or institutions that had students, other than mostly white students, that we wanted to do a better job trying to understand their experiences. Hence the new project that I'm becoming more interested in. So PTC was born. So the phase 1 of this is going from 2015 to 2019. Phase 1, we sent out a census survey to every single math department that offers a graduate degree in mathematics, every single one of them, which is really cool, so that's why we call it a census survey. Phase 2, this is going to happen in the upcoming fall. We are conducting case studies of 12 different departments that are enacting these 7 features to varying degrees. So whereas with the first study, we tried to select institutions that were more successful, here we're trying to select institutions that are interesting in different ways with these different combinations. So some of them we're choosing are implementing a bunch of the 7 features and have really poor DFW rates. Some of them have really good DFW rates but aren't implementing any of the 7 features, and then we have things in the middle, just to try to test our theories here. So if we think of CSPCC as studying like models that work in Calc, we can think about PTC as exploring these models. So the first phase was the census survey, so we sent it to 330 institutions, and we got a really high response rate because we bothered people a lot. We, like the PI team, we divided up the list of schools that hadn't responded, and do we know anybody on the faculty? Do we know the chair? Can we send them a personal email? So we got really great response rate. So it's fun because we feel pretty confident being able to say, this is what's happening across the nation. It was a 3-part survey. The first part, we were just trying to identify the different pre-Calc, Calc 1, and Calc 2 courses. Because we were looking at all the different flavors, we wanted to understand what those were. Then we wanted to understand departmental practices in support of these, who's teaching them, how many students are in the classes, that sort of stuff. And then part 3, we wanted details about the courses identified attending to these different features. So trying to understand like how GTAs who are teaching more prepared, what's the placement like. A note about this survey, we sent it to the department chair and then asked that department chair to send it to the people in their faculty who might be able to answer those sections. So we don't know if the chair actually did that. And so this is all based on the perspective of either the chair or who filled it out. So like at my own institution, I took the part about GTA professional development and shared that with some of the GTAs, and they said this actually doesn't really align with what we experienced. So we'll take these as kind of a surface level, a large surface level picture of what's going on. So the first research, or the couple of research questions that we can get into with this, first one that I'm going to go over quickly is how do math departments prioritize the importance of the 7 features found in CSPCC, and how successful do they report being on these 7 features? How satisfied are departments along these 7 features, and what changes are they considering and why? And then what innovative format and structures are currently in place in this sequence, and how common are they nationally? So I'm going to go quickly over these answers. Okay, so the importance versus success. On the survey, we asked how important are these features for having a successful calculus sequence. How successful is your program in these different features? And so here are the different features. There are 8 because we've broken up coordination into uniform course components and regular instructor meetings. So those are kind of 2 very different aspects of what the coordination was. Challenging courses, student support programs, student placement, GTA, use of local data, and active learning. So then we just graphed these on 0 to 1. So if it was -1, it was not important. If it was 0, it was somewhat important, and 1, it was very important. So we're only showing quadrant 1 because everything on average was between somewhere and very important. And so if we graph them here where importance is this one and success is this one, I know we're all math people and we can figure this out on our own, but I'll just highlight it because I'm going quickly. So if it's along the y equals x, we have importance equals success. If it's up here, importance is greater than success, so it's more important than they are successful with it. And if it's down here, they are more successful than it is important. Okay, so give you a second to think about where things might land or get your head wrapped around some of these. Obviously over here and here, it's more successful, more important. Okay, so most things were more important than people felt successful, although people felt pretty successful in having uniform course components. So like you can have a coordinated homework and coordinated exams. That's great. That's not the depth of what we mean by course coordination. So that's regular instructor meetings, which interestingly people didn't find that important or successful. People felt pretty equal on challenging courses. These I think are pretty interesting, active learning and use of data. So they are fairly important, like medium importance, but people are not feeling successful on these. So that makes sense to me. Okay, so moving on. How satisfied is the department with various things? So here, gray means it's adequate, orange means it could be improved, and black means it's not adequate. So we've pulled a couple of these out. Student placement and use of local data are 2 that people feel fairly like are not working out well. And so, especially, so we've had a couple like big meetings where we get a bunch of department chairs talking about these things, and placement comes up as a really important thing. So a lot of people are starting to think about and worry about placement. So I'm going to say a little bit more about placement here. The use of local data, when we dig a little bit more into that data, people are worried about having access to local data, so they don't know if they can even get interesting data, and then they don't know what to do with it once they get it and how to use that data to inform changes. But access to the data ended up being a big thing, which was interesting. So just really quick, these were the different things that people were using for placement. My understanding here is that it's based on AP exam results, and that's fairly common across the country. And it's split between PhD, so like more PhD departments are just making their own thing up. More master's programs are using high school grades than PhD programs. Some things that are much less common, state exams, AccuPlacer, MA placement exam. So just to give you a sense of what people are using, and then you might wonder, well, does this depend on how satisfied people are, which thing they're using? No, not really. People are pretty dissatisfied evenly across the board. So there aren't huge spikes except for state exams. So among the people who are using state exams, they're really dissatisfied compared to how they feel if there's room for improvement. Same thing with high school grades, which is interesting. The state exam one, I feel like that could be really dissatisfied because somebody else is telling you what to use and you don't really get to affect any change on what that looks like. Okay, and then lastly, I just want to share briefly some innovative course structures. So if we think about the Calc 1 class that's full of about 2/3 of people who have taken Calc before and 1/3 who have never heard of calculus or who have not taken Calc before, then when you're doing things like making them learn the limit definition of the derivative, and 2/3 of your class already know how to do it quickly. That makes kind of an awkward classroom environment. So we were really curious about other ways that institutions are responding to this. So we're seeing different classes created for, say, less prepared students versus more advanced students. I can say a little bit more about what these are if we want to. But basically, what I get out of this is that there are interesting variations on the courses that are popping up at various institutions. And so when we do our case studies, we're curious to actually see what these look like, dig into how students are feeling about it, how they came about, how successful the place feels about them. Personally, I would love to see more of this kind of stuff happening. If we have more students coming in to Calc with various preparation backgrounds, I can see needing kind of more of these variations. So I'm excited to learn more about that. So like I said, what remains to be seen is how these different variations actually impact student success over the long run. So we don't know if they're successful or not. Okay, so some next steps. One thing we're doing is building networks of departments to share concerns and strategies. So we're really trying to connect department chairs and other people up together. So we're not the only ones saying what's useful, but getting the people who know what they're doing talking more. And then in fall, like I said, we're going to be conducting our 12 case studies over 3, it says years, but it's 3 semesters to try to understand what's going on. So we're really excited about that. So what we were doing here, I don't know if you all knew, but we were here a month ago-ish as a pilot. So we were practicing what was going on so that we can have a really kind of streamlined visit to these 12 institutions. So, thank you. That's all.
Time for questions?
Yes.
I have a question. Since so many students now come in having already taken calculus, is there a question that they know enough to get through even if they're not terribly successful, but Calc 2 is what kills them? I guess is the question, is...
Can you I don't totally understand.
If you come in knowing enough calculus to survive Calc 1 because you've taken it before,
Yeah.
Calc 2 is likely to be the thing that just drives you completely out. I mean, is there any concern that it's not going to be Calc 2 since so many people take Calc 1?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So it's interesting you ask that because I feel research is slow. So this is from the stuff that we're looking at in Calc 1. We went in 2012. We're now 5 years later. So I feel like even more students are taking EP and starting in Calc 2. So everything that we were seeing happen in Calc 1, I think it's just going to shift it up, especially at places like Mines, where you have a lot of students that are starting in Calc 2. So that's one of the reasons we're really curious to do this study and look more at what's happening in Calc 2. Because we heard that, our Calc 1 situation's fine, but it's really Calc 2 that's a mess.
Is anybody thinking about repackaging the whole calculus sequence so that those students who think they know calculus and have taken some calculus courses just sort of face a lot of sort of discomfort and are forced to learn right from the first day they show up and then maybe do it that way?
Yeah. Less of those. So we saw a lot more institutions basically offering their standard course and something for less prepared students. Few of them are offering a standard course and then something else for more prepared students. So the honors, it's not very interesting to include that here because we're more familiar with an honors class. But this accelerated calculus, so it's kind of a bridge where they're covering basically students who don't want to go, let's say, straight into Calc 2, but they have AP credit, putting them in an accelerated Calc 1 and 2, and maybe it goes a little bit deeper. Or does that kind of get at what you were asking?
Not really.
Okay.
I mean, I wouldn't just go faster and deeper or whatever, but no, I try to repackage everything so that it looks different. That, I don't know, you throw in some vectors or so and make them uncomfortable, that they really have to think about what derivatives are.
Yeah.
Not just a rule to follow.
I don't know. I imagine some of that's happening in these honors classes, but we don't really know from what we asked. Hopefully. I imagine these honors course, I've not taught an honors course, but I imagine you're not just doing the exact same stuff that they did in AP. So it seems like a reasonable thing.
Actually, I think Stanford tried something like that 5, 6, 8 years ago. I don't know exactly.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that might be the place it would be captured here. I don't know where else it would be captured on this.
to piggyback off of this question, is
Yeah.
anybody, in kind of what Ganesh was saying, is anyone not doing just calculus, maybe doing like the linear algebra course?
As a first semester
As
thing
like
instead?
first semester. Because I think fewer people are taking linear algebra in high school.
Yeah,
This
I
would be fresher.
don't think we would capture that actually in our survey, because we were asking specifically, like, what do you call the course that goes over differential calculus? What do you call the secondary course that goes over like like integration techniques? So I like that question. I just don't think we didn't get at that.
Maybe not in this study, but just in your knowledge of math education, is anyone doing that?
So offering linear algebra as an alternate to,
Or maybe like next to calculus, or yeah, you can take that instead.
I mean, like if you've already gotten AP credit, let's say, for a bunch of the calc courses, then, like at CSU, I don't see any reason why a student who has credit for Calc 1 and 2 couldn't co-enroll in linear algebra and Calc 3. So I don't know how to answer that.
Okay.
Got time for one more? Yeah.
It's maybe
Lots of
two
pressure.
questions.
Yeah.
But so it's,
Oh,
I
cheater.
think this confidence thing is really interesting. And so first, are those survey questions somewhere that, I could say I wanted to use something similar, is that somewhere?
Yeah, I know that we're 100% happy to share them. I don't know. I think they're up on the website.
Okay. And then
I'll make sure they are.
And then sort of related, do you know if there are people looking into this or theories of things that would help or, like some way to possibly study, because we're
Absolutely.
trying these new, got some active learning things going on here, and it's really, really interesting to see if we're making some effects there.
Yeah.
Differences.
I mean, this is kind of what I want to study too, but like specifically how this is happening for marginalized or students from marginalized populations. But in general, like, I think the question is more like not just doing group work and leading a whole class discussion, but like what else can we do in the classroom to support students' confidence? And there are arguments to be made that basic active learning does take steps to supporting students' increased confidence. But then, so Joe Bowler and colleagues have talked about, complex instruction is I can't remember the name of the original author, but complex instruction is a strategy that they use more in elementary. And then Jo Bowler has some work where she's brought it to secondary that articulates a couple of things that are good. So for instance, like naming students, especially students that maybe seem less confident in a group. Like if you hear, let's say there's a group here working together and I walk by as an instructor and I hear Izzy like kind of quietly like, oh, well guys, like maybe we should think about doing it this way, like this sounds interesting. And maybe they kind of blow her off because she said it really quietly and less confidently. If you're as a teacher, you can be like, okay everybody, like I want to talk about Izzy's strategy, or go over and be like, guys, I think you should really consider Izzy's proof. And just calling it like, not the thing that Izzy just said, but like Izzy's strategy. So that giving name to it is something. So there's a whole, I can send you a paper that has some strategies. And it's not clear to me how much all of those strategies translate to the university level from secondary. In the IBL, so I'm co-running an IBL workshop this summer, and this is something that we're going to talk about. Like, here's some strategies from this Railside High School, from Jo Bowler. Do they make sense to do in university? Have you tried them? What other things are out there? So we don't have a university list, is the shorter answer that I should have said first.
You sort of talked about this before, and you sort of touched on it. I guess what I have found hard about it is now I feel like I'm putting so much on the students in the group to know how to interact well together, and I can't listen to 6 groups in the room at the same time. And then part of it's also just sort of educating people how to behave and let's be supportive.
And this is something that I feel like is easier maybe K through 12, like it's more, I don't know, for me, I haven't been a K through 12 teacher, but it just seems more okay to be like, okay class, like these are the norms in our class, like these are the rules for engaging in a group, and let's talk about why those are the norms. And that's one of the things they say, like kind of laying out the ground rules and talking about, we value multiple contributions and there are multiple ways to share an answer, and sharing why we care for both Izzy and Jessica to give their answer, and not just like, oh, we got the right answer, we're moving on. But so like actually share why multiple competencies is the thing. And I don't know if that would be, I think people do this in university. I think I'd feel a little awkward maybe, but I think it could be done. Like university students are smart.
Great, and we'll continue the discussion moving forward, but I want to thank Jess, thank you very much. Great job. Thanks everybody for the semester colloquia, and have a great summer.
That's all, folks.